Today I'm going to talk about what I don't like about the Niken. In fact, there's only one thing that I don't like. It's a big, heavy bike. And at slow speeds, it can feel ponderous, cumbersome, difficult to manage. So why does the bike feel this way? Well, for one, it's top heavy, and it also has very vague, somewhat unpredictable steering. But I'll talk about the top heaviness first. The Niken, as you know, isn't a light bike. 270 kilograms weight, thereabouts. So fairly hefty. That leaning multi-wheel system, that contributes 50 kilograms. Right, so that whole linkage system, the 4 forks, 2 wheels and tires, plus brakes, and frame reinforcements needed to handle that extra load and weight. So that's 50 kilograms. Unfortunately, because of what it is, you can't locate that 50 kilograms near the center of mass, near the center of the bike. That weight goes up front, and some of it goes quite high up. Right, so the wheels, the 2 wheels are right up front. The forks are high up. That linkage system is definitely high up. So all this combines to create a bike with less than ideal weight distribution. And this would explain why it feels top heavy and very tippy. It just wants to tip over. Of course, I'm being silly here. All bikes want to tip over. That's what bikes do. You need a rider to stop that from happening. But what I mean is that on the Niken, this sensation of wanting to fall over is really exaggerated. And I think the high CFG definitely doesn't help there. I'll give an example. On more than one occasion, when I was trying to push the bike into a parking lot, I had to make a somewhat sharp 90-degree turn. And midway through that turn, the bike just started leaning on me, unexpectedly. It's as if there was someone on the other side of the bike pushing down on it. There was this sudden increase in weight or force that I really wasn't expecting. Fortunately, I managed to recover, and the bike did not come crashing to the ground. But it was a close shave. It could have gone either way. And I was just thankful that I could avoid a potentially embarrassing and expensive incident. But that event also reminded me that I really needed to be careful around this bike, especially at low speeds. It's full of surprises. But here's what I think was happening when I was trying to push that bike in. Right? Basically, as I started that turn, the bike was fully upright, which means weight was distributed evenly between the two front wheels. Right, so assuming the bike weighs 270 kilograms and there's a 50% weight distribution between front and rear, that means there's 135, let's say 140 kilograms up front and another 140 kilograms at the rear. So up front, that 140 kgs is shared by the two front wheels, so 70 kgs each wheel. So as I start that turn, the 70 kgs per wheel, and as I start leaning left into the parking lot, weight is slowly being transferred from the right wheel to the left. So that left wheel gets progressively heavier the deeper I go into that turn. So from 70 it becomes 75, 80, until the middle of the turn where the bike is leaning at its lowest, and that's when there's the most weight distribution or the most weight transfer. Now on a normal bike this happens as well, so this weight transfer is not unique to the Niken. The thing is, on a normal bike, that weight is pivoting on just one point, that single front wheel, so that pivot point doesn't move. So as the weight is moving from right to left, it's still on a fairly stable platform, and that weight transfer comes across as gradual. It's easy to manage and accommodate. The system on a Niken, of course, is nothing like that on a single front wheel. The Niken has two pivot points. Right, so as weight is being transferred, it's going from right wheel to left wheel, from the right side of the bike to the left, and the center of mass is moving accordingly. Of course, in the case of the Niken, the pivot point does move, and it moves quite a bit. The difference in distance between the right and left wheel, it's over 40 centimeters. So that shift from from right pivot to left pivot, it's not improbable to result in a dramatic and sudden transfer of weight as the center of mass moves, and it could be significant enough to surprise the living daylights of unsuspecting Niken owner. So that's what I think happens when I was trying to, or that's what I think happened as I was trying to steer the Niken into a parking lot. I haven't found a workaround around it, apart from just being vigilant and always switched on. Whenever attempting any kind of slow speed maneuver on the Niken, slow speeds just bring out the worst in this bike, in my opinion. Especially slow speed maneuvers where there's any kind of incline or hill involved. I think at slow speed the Niken is the worst of both worlds. the worst of both two-wheeled and three-wheeled worlds. At slow speed, it'll fall down like a two-wheeler. But at slow speed, it also has the footprint and the maneuverability of a three-wheeler. Overall, a terrible combination. But apart from the top heaviness, the bike also has what I feel is incredibly vague steering. It seems as though there's a disconnect at low speed, of course. There's a disconnect between the handlebars and the front wheel, like feedback from the tires are not being sent or being received by the rider. An input from the rider is not getting through to the front wheel. It just feels vague and, like I said, disconnected. I'll give an example. You know, on a normal bike, as you're coming to a stop, it's really a non-event, right? You slow down, hit the brakes, come to a complete stop and stick your leg out. That's it, job done. On a Niken, that process, believe it or not, actually requires a bit more deliberation. Because coming to a stop on the Niken, I can never really be sure whether I need to stick my left foot out or my right foot out. I literally have no idea which side the bike will tip on. That's something the bike decides. And to be honest, I wish I was joking. You see, what I think is happening is that as the bike slows down, their steering system just changes. On a Niken, momentum is your best friend, and when the bike is moving, when the gyroscopic forces are at play, speed is involved. And then the two wheels track and steer perfectly. But the moment speed drops and those forces disappear, then the Niken steers completely differently. Remember, although the two wheels lean together, they actually operate independently. There's nothing connecting them directly. So what happens is, at slow speeds, as the bike is coming to the stop, the two wheels start wandering, because remember, there's no more speed or momentum to keep them in line. The two wheels start wandering and hunting for a new balance point, and that's what I feel contributes to making the bike feel so vague and unresponsive at slow speed. So while all this is happening, you apply the brakes and the bike stops. And of course, whether it stops left or right is anybody's guess. Normally I'm just ready to stick out either leg. Of course, if I wanted to be absolutely sure that the bike falls to the left every time, then like I mentioned, I'd have to be a bit more proactive and deliberate with the steering. What I need to do is, just before the bike comes to a complete stop, I'd have to counter steer to the left, as in I turn the handlebar to the right by pushing left on the bars. Of course, this automatically causes the bike to lean into the left, and the job gets done. But yeah, it's something you need to learn to do on the Niken. It's not a big deal, but it just goes to show just how different the Niken behaves at slow speed. Of course, if you want to add fuel to the fire, just throw in a couple of hills or inclines. Steep terrain really magnifies all of the faults of the Niken that I just mentioned. You know, this is strange because with 3 wheels, you might think the Niken has the stability of a tripod, especially at slow speed, but nothing could be further from the truth. And that's my primary gripe, the main issue I have with the bike. It just feels cumbersome, unwieldy, and awkward at very low speeds. I suppose that's the trade-off you'd need to accept if you get a bike like this. Very good performance at medium to high speeds, and sub-optimal performance at low speed. Performance in the sense of handling. Right, so for me it's a case of peace of mind at high speed and mild to moderate anxiety at low speeds or at walking pace. Personally, I feel that's a fair trade-off. But I guess it helps to look at the Niken differently. The bike is operating on a different level. Right, so compared to a normal bike, which is stable at high speed and maneuverable at low speed, the Niken is kind of operating at the extreme ends of that spectrum. Right, so it's much more stable, much more grippy and safer at high speed, and consequently it is much less maneuverable, much less manageable at slow to very slow speeds. So it's playing a different game, and that's something you've got to be comfortable with, and something that someone looking to buy a Niken should understand. Is this steering characteristic of the Niken a flaw? Or is it more a characteristic? Maybe we're just looking at it the wrong way, and just let's call it an idiosyncrasy. So yes, I'd rather have that added security at high speed any day. Of course, it's also easy to say that because I haven't dropped the bike, and I suspect that if I do end up unfortunately dropping the bike 1 or 2 times, then my impression of the bike might very well change. Anyway, that's it from me. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.